That beautiful era of the 90s saw people sitting in theaters, laughing uncontrollably. A man on screen would twist and contort his face like rubber, making them forget the burden of their lives for a few moments. Yet, the greatest irony is that the man who made the world laugh so wildly had nights soaked in his own tears. On screen, he would shout, "Alrighty then," but deep inside his heart, a voice echoed, "Is anyone listening to my cries?" This is the story of that uncrowned king of comedy, whose face was merely a mask to the world, but behind that mask hid a lonely and broken person. This is the story of Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was born on January 17, 1962, in Newmarket, Ontario, a small Canadian town. Childhood was difficult for him. Jim's mother, Kathleen, often became lost in sedation due to chronic illness and the effects of painkillers. His father, Percy, was a saxophone-playing musician who was forced to take a seat in an accountant's chair just to keep the home running. To escape the tension at home, little Jim would spend hours in his room in front of the mirror, attempting to amuse himself by making funny faces. Through this process, he realized he possessed a talent for mimicking people. Do you know who Jim's first audience was? His own parents. He constantly tried to make his sick mother laugh, hoping she would forget the sadness induced by the painkillers, even if only for a few minutes. Amidst this laughter, the dream of becoming a comedian was born in Jim's heart. However, the harsh truth of a middle-class family is that a sudden emergency can bring the entire family from the sky directly onto the street. That very emergency struck Jim's home when he was 12 years old and his father lost his secure accountant job. The family's entire financial structure collapsed like a house of cards. Conditions progressively worsened, and the Carrey family had to leave their home. For some time, the entire family spent several nights inside their Volkswagen van. Jim and his brother spent many months living in a tent pitched along the shore of Lake Ontario. The thought of enduring the Canadian cold in a tent is chilling. Strangely, Jim recalls that during that time, his family grew even closer, and they began to find happiness in small things. A bit of light returned when Percy secured an accountant job at a tire factory called Titan Wheels. They were also given a small house. However, in return for the house, Jim and his brother had to work all night doing cleaning and security duty at the factory. From 6 p.m. until morning, he and his brother, John, cleaned factory floors and toilets, and performed security guard duties. The boy who used to make everyone laugh now avoided speaking to anyone or making new friends. The road to stand-up. Despite the hardships, Percy was a super dad who never let Jim's dream die. When Jim was 15, Percy took his hand and encouraged him, saying, "Son, just try the stage once. You have this gift." This encouragement led Jim to Yuck Yucks, a small comedy club in Toronto. Jim took the mic, stood on stage, and started mimicking famous people, but the audience began to boo him. For poor Jim, this was not mere rejection on stage, it was a devastating slap to his dream. Jim continued working in the factory until 1979 while simultaneously polishing his act. His hard work paid off, and he finally secured a 20-minute show at a small club, earning $20. Slowly, his name started spreading throughout Toronto's comedy clubs. One day, the great comedian Rodney Dangerfield noticed Jim. Dangerfield was so impressed that he decided to take Jim on his tour as an opener. Imagine, just a few years earlier, this boy was booed off the stage, and now he was performing alongside legends of the American comedy circuits. Fueled by this encouragement, at just 19 years old, Jim headed toward Hollywood, the city where dreams either come true or shatter. Jim's biggest goal upon reaching Hollywood was The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Carson was considered the kingmaker of comedy. Success on his show made a career, while failure meant the chapter was closed. In 1983, Jim got the opportunity to perform on the show. A test performance was held at the Improv Club in Los Angeles. Jim gave his best, but the audience reaction was lukewarm. The very next day, Jim received a call canceling his performance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. The dream he held in his hand slipped away like sand. A short time later, Jim landed a lead role in the NBC sitcom The Duck Factory. Heartbreakingly, the show was canceled after just 13 episodes. It is surprising to consider that the rubber face expressions that later captivated the world were initially Jim's biggest curse. The feedback he received after many auditions was often "it's too much" or "he looks unreal." Then came an opportunity, the Deadpool, the final film in the Dirty Harry series. Jim made an audition tape, where he literally went mad. He danced wildly, broke things, yelled at the camera, and even spat on the camera. After sending the tape, he realized he thought his career was ruined. However, fate intervened. The tape reached Clint Eastwood, who said, "I love the tape. I showed it to all my friends." When they met on set, Clint put his hand on Jim's shoulder and said, "Good job, kid." Jim received a small role as Johnny Squares, a drug-addicted rock star who dies of an overdose at the beginning of the film. The role was exciting but extremely brief. His screen time was so short that the audience barely noticed him. Despite being part of such a large project, Jim's life remained stagnant. Every night, Jim would drive his old Toyota up to the hilly roads of Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles. Looking at the city lights, he visualized his future success. He assured himself that the things he desired existed somewhere and would definitely come to him one day. Taking this visualization a step further, around 1990, Jim wrote himself a check for $10 million and crumpled it up in his wallet for motivation. This was an incredible act, as the man who barely had enough money for food at the time dared to dream of $10 million.